Welcome to No Longer Conformed. We're studying the book of Revelation. In this session, we'll be looking at Revelation chapter 17, verses 8 to 18, the destruction of the harlot. We talked about this a lot last time, but if you identify the symbols of chapter 17 and verse 7, the picture, it suddenly comes into focus. That verse, Revelation 17:7, but the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. First of all, there is the beast. Look at verse 8 of Revelation 17. The beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. It says will ascend out of the bottomless pit. Go back to chapter 11 and verse 7, where it says, when they finish their testimony, talking about the 2 witnesses, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them and overcome them and kill them. Verses 1 through 7 of this chapter are before his rise to power. Look at chapter 13 in verse 3, verse 12, verse 14. Verse 3, and I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. Then verse 12, and he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. In verse 14, and he deceived those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who was wounded by the sword and lived. Second, there's 7 heads. Look at verses 9 through 11. Here is the mind that has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to perdition. Well, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the harlot sits. Latin poets often wrote of the 7 hills of Rome. The beast's power is Rome, the revived Roman Empire. There are also 7 kings. Are they a list of Roman emperors? 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other is yet to come. John's perspective at the time of his writing would have been 5 have fallen. That, from his perspective, would be Julius Caesar, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero. 1, Domitian, the worst persecutor of the church, who actually put John on Patmos. Daniel's 70th week, separated by the church age. The other has not yet come. See? So we have 5 who have fallen, one that is, and the other has not yet come. That's the revived Roman Empire. So you had the Roman Empire, then the one who was when John was put on the Isle of Patmos, and then we have the rest of the church age up to the rapture, and then Daniel's 70th week comes into play, the week of tribulation. That's all separated, remember, by the church age, from Israel before the church. And the other is not yet to come. And then the eighth, the beast, the Antichrist, he'll rule by that revived Roman Empire. And of course, he ends up in hell. And then third, there is the 10 horns. Verses 12 through 14. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. They are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. The 10 horns are 10 kings. They'll be allowed to reign for a purpose. And what's that purpose? It's the purpose of the beast. That 1 hour is not literal. If you look to Luke 22 and verse 53, hour is used as a period of time rather than a specific moment in time. In Luke 22:53, Jesus said, "When I was with you daily in the temple, you did not try to seize me, but this is your hour and the power of darkness." So that hour is not a literal hour in a 24-hour period, but it's a moment in time. It's a particular event time. The confederation of nations that comes together, those 10 nations will surrender all of their sovereignty to the Antichrist, who rules this revived Roman Empire. And they become this great confederation of nations. And why? Well, verse 14 makes it clear that they have a common adversary in Jesus Christ and his followers. Daniel, it says he'll make war with the Lamb and his followers. Daniel chapter 7, verses 23 and 24. It says, "Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. The beast rules over the kings, but the King of kings and Lord of lords is coming." Look at verse 1 again. It's explained in verse 15. "Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying to me, 'Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters.'" And then you go to verse 15. "Then he said to me, 'The waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues.'" See, the apostate church will be an ecumenical body of all different kinds. The destruction of Babylon, you can see this whatever's left after the rapture of the Roman Catholic Church, all the other religious bodies are going to join in and become part of this federated worldwide church. And so it's going to be made up of so many. It's going to be very ecumenical. The destruction of Babylon. Religion allied with political power is destroyed when Babylon is fallen. Religion, it just mixed in with political power. Her source of strength will actually turn against her. It's an image of complete annihilation. Look at verse 16. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. And verse 17 is a testimony of God's purposes in man's activities. It says, for God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast, until the words of God are fulfilled. Again, if you combine verse 15 and verse 9, and the harlot, if you combine those, the harlot is revealed as apostate religion operating through the Roman Catholic Church. The Vatican City, the seat of the head of the worldwide Roman Catholic Church, today it remains a sovereign state. It sits right there. Vatican City sits right in the middle of Rome, but it's not part of Italy. It's not part of Rome. It sits in Rome, but it's not there. It is actually a sovereign state, like a separate country to itself. Look at verse 15. In verse 9. Then he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits, listen, the worldwide scope of it, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And then verse 9. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. So just kind of review that for just a moment. Religion will thrive during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation, centered in Rome, with many groups aligned together. No challenge for power. At the midpoint of the tribulation, the beast, Antichrist, uses the 10-nation confederacy, which he takes over, to destroy the church and to set up worship of himself, just as he does with the temple. Evil, listen, don't miss this. Evil uses other evil for selfish purposes until it's no longer needed. The Antichrist used this worldwide religious structure and federation until he didn't need it anymore. And then he destroyed it. He used that 10-nation confederacy, and then he set up worship of himself. Verse 18. And the woman whom you saw, listen, is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth.